The #1 Terran from the European server is facing off against the #1 Protoss. What I've got for you today is the finals of the ESL Open Cup 191 for, well, you may have already guessed it, the European server. We're in game #1 in the top left-hand corner from Denmark. We're looking inside of the main base of MaxPax. And his opponent, all the way in the opposite corner. You may have already recognized him by the little polar bear that's spinning around on the main command center. He's been accompanied by that one for, at least on this account, on this server, he's been accompanied by it for several years at this point. I feel like I've seen a lot of games at the very least, where he's had the little polar bear. But playing right here with the red SCVs from France, we're looking inside of the main of Clem. So Clem versus MaxPax. This should be an absolute banger. Both of these guys, I mean, they're ridiculously good at the game. I really don't think they really need any additional introduction, because I do cast the both of them very frequently. But since they do play against each other so often as well, I've got a feeling this is going to be a very spicy game. And right from the get-go, Clem is going to start being a very annoying Terran. He decided to rally this SCV the long way around. As long as he gets it down at a reasonable time, there we go. The engineering bay block is going to be super annoying. MaxPax decided to go for the cyber core, and now he wants to go for a nexus on the low ground. He's sitting at 400 minerals, but he can't. Immediately, Clem, though, is going to turn around as well. He wants to see if, yeah, the third nexus is going to be, well, I guess the second nexus is going to be built over at the third base location. That's exactly what MaxPax decides to do, but this is well worth the small investment right here for the Terran player, because this is now a lot more frustrating for the Protoss player to play. At this level, it really shouldn't matter that much, but there's no denying that, say, for example, yeah, you're gonna double down on the aggression, and then a bunch of units fly into the main base, for example, and the Stalkers are hanging out over here. Protoss has to go all the way around, which is very different compared to, well, when their Nexus is built in their preferred location. Either way, MaxPax at this point doesn't see this, and this could be actually quite annoying. Oh no, he doesn't know where the SCV went. He's probably assuming it took another tricky, well, route back home, or maybe it's hanging off just barely off screen. This isn't going to be the end of the world, but the Marine here has just simply wandered straight across the map. Is he going to wait? Really? He's going to wait for a little while longer too. He doesn't actually want to fire just yet. Oh, he's trying to wait until that Nexus is done at the very least. Okay, now he's gonna pop it in right now. I was gonna say, that would be really quite cheeky. It's not like the Nexus is gonna get cancelled, right? It's not like this really is gonna make much of a difference. Small little missed rally right there from Clem. Probably assumed that it was rallied into the bunker. But anyway, so far, Clem certainly starting off this series with a little bit of spice. Shield battery is coming up here for MaxPax, so he should be okay. But still, it's annoying. Stargate at this point is done. There it is. We're gonna go straight into the Oracle. And it's really easy. Ooh, it's really easy here for Terran to get a little bit too carried away with this aggression. Because in the grand scheme of things, yeah, he slowed down the Protoss a little bit. But it's not the end of the world, right? And if all of your units are in the meantime on the other side of the map, then sometimes that Oracle can actually put in a ton of work. Now, sadly here for Protoss, these Adepts absolutely suck when it comes to killing a bunker. Yeah, the SCV keeps popping out as well to try and repair it for a little bit. Eventually, that was bound to happen. Clem is waiting out here as well to maybe try and do a drive-by into the main base, and I do think that's the plan. Alright, Oracle decides to turn around. At the very least, two of these units will get, well, distracted and maybe killed. There we go. It takes 3 of these Hellion shots to one-shot a worker, so getting a few of them out of the equation is massive. It looks like at the very least for now, MaxPax is gonna stabilize. But you can see this is already such a dicey game. Salvage did not complete, I believe, so it's actually kind of painful here. Clem losing a little bit of money. And in the end, this is an excellent start right here for MaxPax. He's got a 10-worker lead. Command Center is gonna finish up here, and it is gonna fly on down towards the low ground. But of course, MaxPax has already finished up his Nexus quite a while ago, and he's probably thinking about even making a third base here very soon. Alright, we've got ourselves the Phoenixes, a robo facility on the back of it as well. So MaxPax is likely thinking about making that Colossus transition that is so very popular in this matchup. A couple Marines here hiding underneath the command center. Not where you want to be positioning those units. And there indeed does go the third Nexus in the natural location. Okay. Yeah, so the vast majority of Protoss players, you can imagine, would have already lost this game against Clem, right? This is one of those professional skill checks where it doesn't necessarily obtain you the victory, but it's very easy for the Protoss player in this case to make a mistake and then, well, you to be able to, well, find a lot more value as the game progresses. Oracle, by the way, managed to go around. The one SCV kill, though, that is on the unit's lost tab is, of course, the SCV that was building that bunker. Very frustrating over here, but in the end, how many workers went down? Just a single one here for the Protoss. There's the Robo Bay. Immortal coming up, too, for just safety and to make sure that any Marauder pushes or anything along those lines. I'm not going to be able to put in so much work. Shield battery still helping out. Okay, that's one additional probe. Maybe one more. Yeah, not bad. I mean, I say not bad. It's also nothing to write home about, right? So the problem is, of course, that those Hellions generally lose value regardless. You can kind of keep them around if Protoss decides to go for maybe, I don't know, a charge slot transition, right? That will probably come up later on, but they're not super useful anymore at this phase in the game. So you may as well try and just squeeze whatever juice you can get out of them. In the end, though, Terran is going to go for an attack. Protoss hasn't lost all too much, but this is by no means going to be an easy hold. Stimpack at this point is done. This is not an attack with the combat shields and the +1 infantry weapons, because those are still coming. Colossus, though, is going to pop out of the Robo facility here very soon, and that is going to make the game a little bit easier, but the Phoenix control here has to be on point. Without a Colossus, it's going to be really hard to get much done. Okay, he decides to put a random force field down right over there. Colossus, it's time for the lasers. Yep, you can see without the Colossus, right? So that's a pretty good example as to where a lot of Protoss players would have already lost this game. If they didn't necessarily lose with the early game aggression, it would have been the follow-up attack right here, where they could be blindsided, because you have to be on point with your macro as well. While you're defending at home, you need to make sure you put down your Robo facility and then eventually your Robo Bay at the correct timings while you're under all of that pressure, because the follow-up attack from Terran is also very dangerous. If this Colossus wasn't here, I can imagine that Clem probably would have walked all over his opponent's army. Twilight Council. Forge on the back of it right now too. Stimpack and, well, combat shields. Combat shields, of course, finishing up right now. Together with the +1 infantry weapons, they're gonna all finish up here eventually, and that's gonna give these Terran units a nice power spike. Now, one of the medevacs almost ended up going down. Somehow, some way, that one survived. MaxPax is forced to play defense for a little while longer, but this is, of course, leading into a very scary attack. Yeah, and this is where I think a lot of people didn't necessarily expect MaxPax to be, right? All those years ago, like, MaxPax came up with some very spicy strategies. There's the MaxPax opener in Terran vs. Protoss. Maybe we'll see it later on into the series, where he decided to go for a pylon into gateway build. And sometimes players come up with new strategies, and then they have a hard time actually, well, making sure that they're competing at the absolute highest level. But MaxPax, well, he started off being a bit of a cheeser when StarCraft 2 first, well, was introduced to him. He was playing quite aggressively. He really turned into an amazing macro Protoss, and in this game so far, you can really tell the caliber that the man is capable of. Really not missing a beat so far. Losing very few units up to this point, and now he's got himself the charge coming up together with the +1 ground weapons. There is the Templar Archives too, so he can start adding on a couple Archons if he wants to. Just flying around here with the Oracle still on the other side of the map, getting whatever value he can. Stasis Ward, just to be annoying. Jimmy, though, not really too bothered by that. But the attack is coming. MaxPax has been playing defense for the first 8.5 minutes. I think we'll see him go for a bit of a move here momentarily. Although, he really doesn't need to, right? Like, that's always the conundrum. That's a word I never use. That's always the problem whenever you're playing a game of StarCraft 2. Oftentimes, when you are in a good position, the way you can guarantee the win later on, assuming you don't mess up, right? And that's the big assumption, is to make an expansion rather than go for an attack. So a lot of Protoss players in particular, they have found that if they go for an attack right now, they may accidentally butcher their hotkeys for a little bit, or they may have had a small misread in the game and the Terran happens to have a little bit more than they expected. It is usually the safer option to just try and expand behind it. Anyways, of course, that does also give Clem more potential here to get back into the swing of things. And you can tell already that supply-wise, that third command center has kicked in really nicely here for Clem. It's not like he's in an awful position by any stretch of the imagination. It's always important to now start driving these advantages home. Okay, so here we go. MaxPax is ready to go for an attack. Prism is going to warp in another set of Zealots inside of the main base. Couple Zealots already being annoying. A few units here are freshly picked off in the natural expansion too. Those Phoenixes from the early game also still helpful to protect against the 4 Colossi now. Couple Marines and Marauders, though, left behind in the main base. They're going to be able to get rid of those Warpins, but this is where those Archons shine, right? So much damage. coming out of those bad boys. There's a couple ghosts here trying to make the best of this scenario. Clem trying to stabilize, and even if he manages to do so here eventually, he has lost so many workers. GG is cold. Beautiful game number 1 right there from MaxPax. And that brings us to Gresvin, game number 2. I fast-forwarded through the first 2 minutes of the game because nothing all too exciting happened. MaxPax decided to go for a probe scout, but this unit right here, the Reaper, is going to be the very first time that Clem will see the opposite corner of the map. Should be an adept out. There it is. To try and just push this back to make sure that this Reaper is not going to start putting in all too much work. But yeah, that first game, I hope I do a decent enough job explaining it, but if you've ever played StarCraft 2, and you've gotten to a point where you really feel like you've gotten pretty decent, right? Like you feel like you're actually in control. You realize how difficult and how delicate that early game for Protoss really is. Because there are so many moments where you can accidentally slip off the court and then fall to your death, where your ladder points end up going down. And I guess in this particular game, MaxPax would be 1-0 behind in the series. Because even when you have that really clean early game defense, it's so easy to just misrally an Immortal or misrally a Colossus, which would be even worse. It's so easy to just slip up and suddenly be very far behind. Nice little bit of movement right here, by the way, from Clem. Trying to get this Reaper out. I don't think it's going to happen because, yeah, the SimCity here for MaxPax is a little bit too good. He does scout, however, after killing a probe as well, that there is indeed a Twilight Council transition coming up, and that's always nice to know. This is a map, of course, where you can go for the 4-gateway blink into the main base. A lot of good locations. But MaxPax hasn't really been playing that all too much lately, I feel like. Like, for a while, we saw guys like MaxPax and Hero play 4-gateway blink all of the time, and maybe I just haven't seen those games. That's very possible, because they do play quite a few tournaments, but lately it seems like there's a lot more triple gateway into just a regular... Okay, now we do go for the 4-gate blink. Fair enough. But we do see a lot of, like, triple gateway expense lately. This time around, though, and that is always difficult here for Clem, of course. He has seen that his opponent decided to go for a quick Twilight, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be an all-out attack on the other side of the map. Well, it turns out it is, but like I said, MaxPax has been choosing quite frequently lately to go for the more regular expansion approach instead, and maybe it has something to do with the maps, however he's feeling in the moment, the time of the series, the opponent, of course, as well. It's going to be tricky to win the game straight up against somebody of Clem's caliber, but you never know. Alright. Widowmine drop, coming in. Beautiful scout right there by MaxPax, though. He sees it. Yeah. Clem is not even going to commit. Hellion trying to go around the side as well. This is mostly just for scouting purposes, and it is also going to get shut down. At least a couple Stalkers here will be left behind. Clem is going to see the timing or Lecter off of the 3rd base, and that means indeed that the units are going to be going across. So, first siege tank at this point is out, second siege tank about halfway done. Those are very important units. Look at Clem repositioning the starport as well to almost provide a little bit of a buffer right there for that siege tank. As soon he's going to have to deal with a whole lot of Blinky boys. And this is another one of those things, you can execute it brilliantly up to this point, but microing these units is so much easier said than done. All of these units effectively have double blink, right? Because you can pick them up with the prism as well. And it's easy to make a little mistake, like for example this. Widowmine ended up getting the detonation off on the other side of the map. 4 workers, though, is really nothing all too crazy. 3rd Nexus does go down, by the way, in the other location, and this is something that MaxPax sees right now, too. Well, MaxPax does, but also does Clem, probably more important. Bunker in the meantime here at the front. Getting a little bit of work done. Buying time, right? And that's the most important thing. At this point, this is not going to be a killer attack anymore, I don't think. Although they might. Okay, nice snipe right there on the Raven. I was going to say, there should be enough units out at this point for Clem to push this back permanently, but maybe that's not quite the case yet. Lovely control here by MaxPax, though, right? So in the end, it's only 2 Stalkers going down. Would have been a really nice macro 4-gate, I suppose, if he did not lose those 4 probes. Or I guess that would have been... Oh, one of the dudes is on idle. But it would have been pretty much perfect there. Still, though, lovely position. There's gonna be that moment... Ooh, he decides to blink in, really? There's gonna be that moment where Terran is gonna have a little bit too much stuff. And he's trying to... Oh my god, MaxPax is trying to micro his butt off to just straight up win the game here. I really thought since he got delayed a couple times there that he would decide to play this a little bit more passively, but apparently not. So this can really overwhelm the Terran very easily, right? Like if you snipe a siege tank like that, and then the siege tank also provides the opportunity, I guess, for the Protoss player to go after the tech lab that's researching Stimpack. It can be an absolute disaster. Okay, MaxPax showing us that he is still an absolute menace when it comes to fighting this. This is one of those unit compositions, man, that is still not really quite maximized yet, right? Like, there is so much value to be gained in just Stalkers and a Prism. Like, these units have basically been unchanged for the last decade of StarCraft 2, and yet players are still squeezing more and more value out of them. It's beautiful to see. Anyways, in the end right now, though, we did have 12 Stalkers going down, and it would have been fantastic, I think, if Clem would have, well, lost. No, not for Clem, I guess, but for MaxPax, it would have been fantastic if he ended up sniping the tech labs there. That would have been really good, because then the follow-up attack here, he's not done yet? Alright. The follow-up attacks from Clem would be significantly delayed, and Terran would have to make some decisions. Now, though, the power spike is approaching. We've got ourselves the upgrades finishing up. Stimpack, of course, already done. Concussive shells, that's going to be for the Marauders, as well as combat shields. It's going to be for the Marines. Those two upgrades are going to make this Terran army significantly more powerful. In the meantime, again, we have that delicate dance I was talking about. The Robo facility finishes up, and we're going to need to see a Colossus popping out of this Robo facility real soon, because there's going to be an attack from the Terran player on the horizon. So any unit at this point that MaxPax can pick off is fantastic, of course. But the Terran army has grown out of proportion here, and Stalkers alone aren't going to cut it. Alright. Couple units stim forward here. Concussive grenades are shown at this point too. Couple Stalkers end up going down. Yeah, it's about time, MaxPax. Maybe overstaying is welcome a little bit, but honestly, I thought that a couple minutes ago, right? Because I see that going wrong so many times for other Protoss players out there. Go home! Go home, little Stalkers. Alright, he's trying to buy time. Colossus at this point is out. We probably need another Colossus. He needs 200 gas. There we go. Colossus does fire up. In the meantime, a couple Zealots here decide to go in for the run-by, and I love it because, well, they have charge, right? And they may very well force the entire Terran army to turn around. Lovely movement here once again by MaxPax, man. I feel like I've spending this entire cast so far, at the very least, just fanboying over MaxPax, but MaxPax, please play offline tournaments. MaxPax, please play offline tournaments. That would be amazing. Thank you. That would be great. Thank you. One day, please. That would be awesome. Thank you. This guy really is a world-class Protoss player. And yet, it's hard to consider him one when he doesn't play the biggest events in the world just because he doesn't want to play offline. So in case you are unfamiliar with MaxPax, maybe you haven't watched that many games over the last few years, he's been coming up for a couple years now, and at this point he's considered to be one of the very best players in the world. However, he does not go to offline tournaments. He doesn't travel. So, yeah, all of the games that I get to cast featuring MaxPax are online games. And of course, that's well within his rights. Like, I'm not saying he needs to, you know, travel, but as a fan of StarCraft, I would love to see it. Not gonna lie. Anyways, Prism over here gets sniped. SCVs are going down in the main base. MaxPax is gonna push at the front as well. A lot of those units are over-stimped already because of, I guess, those Zealot run-bys. 15 additional SCVs go down. Nice set of force fields there as well, buying more time. Zealots over here being a nuisance. Now, the Prism did get sniped there, so MaxPax is going to have to back off. And I don't think that's a bad idea, because at this point, we're talking a 30-worker advantage here for the Protoss player. He's got 4 bases against the Terran's 3. Clem can, of course, follow this up with mules, right? Those mules are going to be good when it comes to recovering in the economy. But it's easy, again, for Protoss here to get over-eager. Just sit back, make a 5th Nexus, sure, if you feel like it, but just try and make up a bit of a bigger army here. I think that would probably be a good goal. Just put all of your units in one big ball and maybe a few Zealots for a run-by, but then push again when you're maxed. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but MaxPax is an aggressive man. I mean, he's aggressive when he gets to his aggression, right? Like, the early game is, yeah, he's a little bit more calm. Not really... Ooh, not really getting... That was a lovely blink timing as well. Not really getting too aggressive right at the very start of the game with proxy gateways necessarily every game, but once he gets going, he gets going. Additional robo facilities starting up as well. This is something we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks and the last few months, I suppose, where the mass disruptor production is something that Terran players are really struggling with. And this oppression here from the Protoss is going to make it difficult for Clem really to ever make a transition. He is going into ghosts, so that's nice and all, but I don't think MaxPax is going to let his foot off the gas here. Next unit added on as well here for our Protoss player. A couple Stalkers still available, trying to deal with those few Phoenixes, or Terran Phoenixes I suppose, those Vikings. Trying to get some work done, but yeah, MaxPax, I think he may be getting a little bit overly aggressive. I say that. He's getting so much damage done in the meantime as well. Those Zealots once again charging. Generally, you don't really want to see Protoss losing their heavy hitters, but I guess this is okay here. MaxPax can very quickly reinforce this, and now we're talking 5-base Protoss versus just 3-base Terran, who's been losing even more workers over the last few minutes. Alright, now the 4th command center has finished up. Clem has decided to make a brave decision and go for that move on over here towards the left. He'll try to grow a planetary fortress on it, I'm sure, but look at these Zealots. All given multiple assignments to go all over the map into different directions. Observer here as well is going to see exactly what is happening here. Well, eventually it will get sniped, but MaxPax already knows what he's playing against. He's decided, by the way, not to go back. Widow Mine drop. He's decided not to go back into Colossus production at all. Just going Mass Disruptor instead. Planetary Fortress didn't finish up yet. Those Zealots are putting in a lot of work. Are we going to save these Zealots? Yeah, we are. Disruptors! Ooh, trying to get some work done. Great snipe right there on the medevac as well. MaxPax is looking incredibly dominant. Like, you rarely see Clem getting slapped around like this. Oh. I was gonna say, that's one way to turn the game around, I suppose. To blow up your own units. But this entire series so far is domination in favor of the Danish Protoss. GG. Alright, Clem. It's time to tighten up the game a little bit. Clem is by no means playing bad. It's just that he's getting outplayed a little bit so far. Now we do find ourselves on Ancient Cistern next. We'll see if Clem decides to play a little bit differently this time around. I mean, his aggression is not really working out all too well. He's not really, defending as cleanly as he could. It's not like one thing that's going poorly for him right here. It's just that MaxPax is looking a little bit stronger. So the narrative in the StarCraft 2 community right now, in particular for this matchup, is that Terran versus Protoss is heavily Terran favored. At the very least, that seems to be what most people are talking about. And honestly, it may very well be the case. But then I look at the games we've had a look at so far in this series, and I'm really not convinced that that is the truth. Maybe Protoss could use a little bit of love, but when players play like MaxPax does, and obviously I understand that is not something that's feasible for the vast majority of players out there, but when players do commit to aggression the way that MaxPax does, it is looking nearly unstoppable. Anyways, only time will tell, I suppose. Gonna be interesting to see how the next multiplayer balance patch will work out. Now we do have a little bit of a deviation here this time around from Clem, showing up with another Reaper. Okay, recalls after killing the SCV that's building the command center. This is obviously gonna slow down the Terran quite a bit. Also because these units decided to go back around. Cyclone on the back of it right now, 2 here for Clem. Okay. Gateway at the front. Second adept here as well. Phoenix now, no, Oracle rather, already out. Phoenix on the back of it. Let's see how much damage this bad boy can deal. Best Protoss unit in the game? I think so. I think the Oracle is the best unit overall for Protoss. Which is a little sad when you think about the best units for Terran and for Zerg. I don't mean it in a bad way, but it does make me giggle a little bit. Okay, well, best unit in the game for Protoss. Just got utterly destroyed. I don't think there's another Protoss unit that would be considered better, but maybe the Stalker, right? The Stalker is pretty darn good when it's controlled properly, but generally, especially in Protoss versus Zerg, the Oracle is kind of nuts. Anyways, for Zerg, I would say the Queen. For Terran, the Marine, right? I think it's fair to say the Marine is pretty darn good. This guy just got lifted up halfway in his jump and apparently put in stasis for a little bit too. But here comes Clem with the aggression. There's a lot of units right now. Everything that Terran has been rallied towards the other side of the map. Cyclone here with its lock-on gets cancelled and decided to go a little bit too deep. Shield battery finishes up at the perfect moment as well. We already have it backed up with pylon power as well, so not something that Clem can just easily snipe. Is the siege tank coming across the map too? Okay, it's just about to finish up here. I'm assuming it does get rallied. Yeah. The thing is though, the longer that Clem waits with the commitment here, the more Protoss there will be available too. There's no third Nexus on the back of this just yet, so maybe that alone is already enough here for Terran. Phoenixes in the meantime, okay, did fly across the map, and they knew that this was gonna happen. A lot of costly repair money here also spent though by the Terran player. Like maybe he'll be able to save the tank and that's nice and all, but it's not like lifting that up and repairing it is completely free. Oh, okay. I always like that interaction. For some reason it makes me smile whenever I see I don't know, a Viking land on the ground and then being lifted up, or for example a landed Viking into a medevac. For some reason that really is funny to me. Then again, I have strange humor, so it's okay. Anyways, one of the Phoenixes did just now end up getting sniped, and now it's apparently time for Mr. MaxPax to start the aggression. Excellent control here, once again, by the Danish Protoss. But Terran's doing a good job here, right? Clem not really skipping a beat here so far. Yeah, maybe a little overly eager right there with that Viking positioning of his, and I mean, the Vikings at this point don't really help out that much yet. Oh, he wants to get that Cyclone. Careful. That is a mistake. Hey, look. MaxPax is human. That's nice. Okay, he does get it in the end. Phoenix also ends up going down. Observer? Okay. Anyways, those Vikings are going to be very helpful when the Colossus eventually pops, which is only a few seconds away at this point. Third Nexus did start up, of course, as well, when the Terran decided to retreat from the natural expansion of the Protoss. We should be seeing, yeah, I was gonna say, that third command center flying on down towards the low ground here momentarily. This is the additional barracks right now that have come up, so we're gonna be on triple barracks here in total for now. We'll have to see exactly when Clem decides to add on additional production. Stim pack about halfway done, a little bit less. He's gonna start piling on the pressure here momentarily, so after the early game aggression here has settled down, now it's gonna be MaxPax's turn to get a little bit feisty out into the map. I don't think that Clem really wants to be aggressive until at least Stimpack finishes, which is not really too long from now. But you can see that he's already got a nice spread right here on the siege tanks, making sure that he's got some vision as well out front by moving those Marines like he's already done. Sorry, Jimmy, you were just a spotter unit. Jimmy 2.0 has got the same job, but he doesn't really like it too much. Okay. There's the Forge together with the Twilight Council. Are we thinking about making a fourth Nexus already, MaxPax? The Nexus. The next Nexus. I wouldn't mind it. Yeah, so these are the Jimmies right here for Protoss. They're spotter units as well, just to see whether or not the opponent is coming across the map. Maybe they don't have guns, but they do have tasers. And this guy is also carrying 5 minerals, the most precious probe of them all. Those 5 minerals, they disappear, okay? Well, Phoenix is swooping in here from the left. If that probe ends up dying, that is. Those 5 minerals do disappear. The Kuprulu sector tax authorities are never a fan about disappearing minerals, but hey. Where do they go? They just fade into nothingness. Nobody knows. Alright, here's the Nexus. And now we're doing the gateway explosion as well. So 6 additional gateways on the back of this. Explosion de gateway, as Clem would call it, right? Because, I don't know. I don't know what the word gateway is in France. Let me see. Google Translate gateway into French.
Passerelle.
Passerelle. I don't think that's accurate. You can't... There must be at least one French viewer, right? Is the French version of... I know that the French version of StarCraft does have its own names for a lot of the structures. Is a gateway really called a passerelle? Does sound kind of pretty, not gonna lie. Alright. So this game is off to a much better start, right? For Mr. Clem here. It's not that he is necessarily at an overwhelming advantage, but it's not like MaxPax can just go and attack and attack and attack and then attack some more, right? That's the advantage right here of this early game, when you don't really lose any of your really important units. Like Hellions go down, sure, Reapers, couple Cyclones, but none of those units, don't tell them, are particularly important in the mid game. So he traded out early game units for a stellar economy. And now he gets to use all of those siege tanks, for example, that he's got to cover a lot of terrain. Ghost Academy coming up at a very appropriate time as well. You want to have Ghost out by the time that charge finishes for the Protoss player, ideally. Because the Zealots just simply clump up so much, and the same can be said, of course, for the Archons. And these Ghosts are going to be incredibly helpful. Planetary Fortress has just started up as well. So if Clem can land an EMP on, for example, those Vikings and the Archons, and just basically this section right here, like this would be the perfect EMP. He basically shuts down half of that Protoss army with just a single unit. Zealot here hiding behind the leaf. Oh, behind the leaf, rather. This is how kids play hide and seek as well. You can see their legs underneath, you know, anything, but it's okay. Very childish. They're looking for him, man. They can't find him. Where is Zachary the Zealot? He said he was here somewhere. He's invisible, dude. Pretending to be a Dark Templar. You'll have to see it. Okay. Anyways, Disruptors are coming up right now. Both players are maxed out. There's that EMP I was talking about. Removing some of the shields and whatnot off of those Phoenixes here. Oh, big hit. Alright, well, that's that advantage for Terran gone. One of the Disruptors just killed a whole bunch of units. But this is a much more comfortable spot, I believe, here for our Terran, right? So, second starport now coming up. We've got ourselves the starport upgrade as well happening here. And all of that is super helpful when you can get those Liberators going. That's the ultimate counter to this particular Protoss army. It's gonna be a little while still. But it's gonna be something that will be in the back of his mind. Fusion Core. Fusion Core for the advanced ballistics upgrade. +2/+2 is gonna finish up here as well for Clem. Another big one. Yeah, so this game is looking a lot better. This game is looking a whole lot better right here for the Terran. By no means is he at a game-winning position right now, but at the very least, this is where I feel like Clem is at his scariest. His early game is great, his mid game is good too, but one of the main strengths I think that Clem has is that he's incredibly fast. You can see that APM-wise, it's not like MaxPax is a slow player by any stretch of the imagination, but Clem tends to get more powerful as there's more stuff to do throughout a game. He's very good at controlling the chaos. And obviously, as the game gets bigger, more and more bases are available. Yeah. Terran is gonna be very scary. Can he get that one Colossus? Not going to happen. But the Vikings still end up sniping one of the Phoenixes there. Zealots in the meantime at the bottom of the map. Okay, they do find a bunch of the siege tanks, and that is really nice. Planetary Fortress is not done yet. MaxPax should have run away with these Zealots. Yeah, this is not gonna happen, so that ends up being quite costly for him, but he's moving forward once again with his main army. Those Colossi haven't even really fully regenerated their shields yet. Okay. Oh, he's gonna go up? I was gonna say, that seems a little bit dangerous, because that was a concave of Terran. Good pickup right there as well by Clem. Okay, nice control though here by MaxPax. Vikings now decide to land since all of those Colossi are gone and they go up in the air again. I mean, that is some really stellar gameplay and micro from both players though. Lovely control on the Purification Novas, blinking around, trying to make sure he's in the right place, but at the same time Clem setting up the concave right there, but also making sure that he is picking up the units in the medevacs just like that. Landing and lifting the Vikings up in the air and to the ground. Now this is an overextension here by Protoss, yeah. Getting one of those Disruptors. Okay, Immortal ends up getting sniped. Not so Immortal after all. Okay. Now we're gaming, okay? You thought we were gaming previously? These guys are gaming now. We've started. We've begun. Alright. Clem has got to win 3 in a row if he wants to win this series, and with that, the finals of the ESL Open Cup. But if anybody can do it, I think it's Clem. He's backing off the units right here in the direction of the planetary fortress. Liberation zone has been set up. Additional command centers are finishing. We have a Dark Templar run by here on the right side as well. Nice split off right there, right? Trying to mitigate as much of that splash damage from the Widowmine as possible. But Clem has got himself a stellar eco right now, and he's at a position where it's going to be very difficult for the Protoss player to break him with the current army. A lot of Protosses will choose to make a SkyToss transition right now. MaxPax instead is going to finish up his +3/+2 and just continue the harassment. This is dangerous, but maybe this very costly decision by him will pay off. Trying to move forward there. Good movement once again by the Terran player. Planetary Fortress sticks around. Liberators are holding strong. Dark Templar over here have been dealt with. MaxPax has not put down any additional Stargates yet, right? No. So he's just pumping out more and more Robo Facility units. Okay. A lot of Protoss players right now aren't too keen to play ultimate late game against Terran. I've casted quite a few games of Sky Terran going up against Sky Toss, and I think in literally every single one of them, it's the Terran player that ends up winning. So I can't blame MaxPax right here for not wanting to play... Oh, nice hits! For not wanting to play that late game Sky Toss army, but he does start up the transition right now. Yeah, I was gonna say, at some point you really don't have much of a choice. When the Liberator count grows, when there's like 10, 12, 14 Liberators out, life becomes very difficult for a ground-based Protoss army. Since those units can just siege up from such a long distance, and with a couple air weapon upgrades already, Clem's units are not gonna mess around. MaxPax at 95 workers, by the way. 95 probes. So he's got money, yeah, he's got money for days here to just put down static defense. The thing is, transitioning towards SkyToss units, it's slow, right? It takes a while. And that basically means you have to let go off of most of the pressure that you're putting on the Terran player. And as soon as you do that, Clem is gonna expend out of his mind. Like, he's gonna expend out of control. So that, I think, is one of the reasons why MaxPax, combined with that late game army that Terran can make, one of the reasons why MaxPax is a little bit hesitant to play the late game here. Okay. Lovely defense here by Clem, though. Really good stuff. Yep. Alright, so the Tempests have started up. We're currently sitting at about, what, a dozen command centers here? A little bit less. Not bad at all. The Tempests are coming, though. The Tempests are going to be excellent at picking off those long-range Terran units as well. But he kind of needed them yesterday. Well, not literally. He kind of needed them a minute ago. A minute ago in StarCraft terms is basically yesterday. Yep, and you can see that Clem is starting to really tighten the noose here. This base is in all sorts of trouble. Decides to reposition those Liberators once again. Stalkers, a little bit over-eager. Where are the Tempests? Hello. There you go. Yeah, so one of the goals for the upcoming StarCraft balance patch is to make the Tempest a little bit more microbable, I suppose, which is going to be kind of nice. The Viking count, though, still available from those Colossi earlier, or for those Colossi earlier. Turns out they're an excellent weapon against the Tempest as well. Another Colossus was produced out of the Robo facility, and this is starting to look a hell of a lot better right here for Clem. MaxPax right now forced to defense. You can see that those Liberators are still putting in a lot of work, though, constantly picking off units from a distance. 3, 6, 4 kills on these Libs, and I think the majority of those kills are gonna be Stalkers and other units that are very costly. It's not like they're killing a bunch of Zerglings or whatever. Alright, that Nexus eventually goes down. MaxPax's economy here took a bit of a hit because he also lost a lot of probes in the process, and in the meantime, Terran is expanding towards the top left. There it is. Tactical nukes coming up. Additional Ghost Academies building here in the natural expansion of our Terran player 2. Clem still roaming the map with a very scary set of units. But you can see this setup over here in the bottom section of the map. And Yeah, all of these locations are just so difficult for the Protoss player to break that Clem can decide to only commit a very small amount of units for the defense at home and use everything else for the offense. When the liberation zones are set up in the right spot, it's much harder for the Terran player, or it's much harder rather for the Protoss player to break the Terran out of this position. And I believe this is looking like the end for either that Protoss army, or the Nexus, or both. Yeah, Stimpack is being used very liberally. Yeah, the Nexus does go down. There's not a lot of medevacs available, so yeah, he's actually producing them once again. That's where those triple starports are very, very helpful. You can go for the reactors and bump out all sorts of units. Okay. Terran forced to back off right now, but that squad has taken out a Nexus over here, taken out a Nexus up north. Plus it bought time for this base in the top left-hand corner to go down as well. MaxPax right now in all sorts of trouble, but he does still have a very scary army. This is not an army that you can just wave away as the Terran player. You have to micro against this, and you have to be very cautious with the way you engage it, because it is capable of gaining value over time. The more Purification Novas go down, the better this is going to be. A lot of the Terran army still at low hit points. Colossi joining in the fray as well. They are getting rid of those Marines very quickly. In the meantime, the Tempest and Disruptors are doing a good job against the Marauders. Okay, now that the first Tempest are out and we have a little bit of staying power out on the map, that's going to be the cue right here for a carrier, but every carrier right now is precious. The Tectonic Destabilizer's coming up as well. That's the damage upgrade that those Tempests have against structures, and they would have loved to have it right here, because that would make getting rid of this command center so much easier. Alright. Clem once again maxed out. He scans the bottom right-hand corner and he sees that Protoss does not have that base. He doesn't have the base in the center yet. But other than this one, he's got his entire side of the map taken. Viking count has been growing, by the way, very quickly. We're up to 14 right now, with more and more coming out. Yeah. Clem's spending whatever supply he has available and just getting more and more Vikings out. I wouldn't mind seeing some more upgrades on them, specifically as far as armor goes, because those Vikings are gonna have to deal with the Colossi soon, and obviously helps out against the Stalkers as well. Dark Templar here trying to just get rid of that command center to the best of his abilities. But Clem already has more mineral fields than he can really effectively mine, so he really doesn't even need that base. It's gonna be nice to have, though. It's an investment into the future, but Clem at this point is starting to really outgrow MaxPax. MaxPax has been doing a good job making the best of a bad situation, right? But he's slowly suffocating here. He just doesn't have enough resources to properly reinforce his army. And even though it's taken several minutes for Clem to make that obvious, you can really tell it right now by the supply count. Clem has been outproducing his opponent for quite a while now, and MaxPax has been trying to rebuild up his economy. But GG has to be called. Clem gets a point on the board. Very well played right there by the Frenchman. Next up, Babylon. Clem has decided to mix it up a little bit. He's decided to go for a Marine first here and then straight into a Reactor. So rather than scouting with a Reaper, he's decided to scout with an SCV instead. MaxPax still going for the Probe Scout every single time. At the very least, I believe, every single time. Some of the Korean Protosses recently have been skipping that Probe Scout, and I just feel like it's very dangerous. It's so easy to accidentally fall behind. He decides to open up with a Twilight Council. On a map like this, generally speaking, we don't see Twilight Council openers as often, just because the Quadruple Gateway Blink opener is not as good here. So earlier this series, we had 4-gate Blink on Gresven, and Gresven has a really nice, big main base ramp, right? So it's really quite easy to blink into your opponent's main base. This is what you have on Babylon. Now, it's manageable, but a siege tank can sort of like be put over here, and it can cover the ramp and then also some of the low ground, and it's not a very popular build. You can always go for the triple gateway Blink, of course, but yeah, it is going to be Blink first here for MaxPax. Most of the time I see MaxPax play this map, he does not go for Gateway Blink. So maybe he'll do it here today just for the memes. Just because his opponent doesn't expect it. But overall, it's not considered to be the best strategy for a map like this. So there's the Robo facility. There's one gateway. That's gateway number 3. Okay. There's gateway number 4 going down as well. So MaxPax going for a strategy that is considered to be quite weak on a map like this. We'll have to see how well this is going to work out for him. One of the things, though, that Clem is well aware of is that since this build is quite weak on a map like this, he may very well cut a couple corners and try to play around it, right? Like a lot of Terran players have been going, there you go, for example, quick triple command center starts. If MaxPax does not deal critical amounts of damage with this early game attack from his, he's going to be in a world of trouble. Terran really is going to have a killer economy here. It's not really reflected yet in the worker count, but it will be soon, and if anything, those mules are gonna give him a tremendous income boost. Yep, you can see this is gonna be the first time with the 3rd command center finishing that Terran is gonna have a nice little... Oh, well, it just updated. It's gonna have a nice little boost in their advantage. Okay, so there's Blink, there's the Prism, there's the Stalkers. It is time for MaxPax to put all of his eggs in one basket. He wants to try and see if he can win this game very quickly and therefore win the ESL Open Cup. Units are already waiting in the main base. Bunker would also be nice over here, but yeah, it's difficult. This main is just not as accessible. Clem is respecting it, though. He doesn't have siege tanks or anything like that, by the way, with an opener like this, because it's triple CC. Into triple barracks. Nice little bit of micro here so far, though, coming out of the Danish Protoss. Units from the low ground. Okay, are accompanied now with the units as well that were already available here. Yeah, MaxPax has decided to just go for the full frontal assault. That's the move we're making. This bunker really should not fall. If the bunker falls, it's going to be a lot of issues right here for Clem, or there are going to be a lot of issues. Combat shields finish up right now. Army count here for Protoss is not looking as impressive, and yeah, MaxPax decided to put down a 3rd Nexus on the back of this. This is the problem, man. If you do this build on this map, and Terran is paying attention, and they are good at the game, even with a triple command center start, they seem to be able to defend this quite comfortably. Stimpack and combat shields are done here for Clem. He hasn't really used it very much yet. Okay, there we go. Blink is obviously going to be on cooldown here for a while, and this is why we don't normally see quadruple gateway Blink on Babylon. Yeah, MaxPax trying to pull a cheeky one right there on his opponent. He's like, he's not going to expect it because this build is kind of trash on this map. So I'll go ahead and pull it off because it works sometimes. So far, though, I'm really not liking this here for MaxPax very much. There's a chance, of course, that he can still turn this one around. We've seen him do that many times before. The follow-up right here, by the way, is not going to be in Colossus either. So MaxPax instead decides to go into the charge research. Forge coming up right now, but yeah, we can go into an Immortal here if we want to, but we don't have a Robo Bay. And without a Robo Bay, you can't make Colossi, you can't make Disruptors, you can't get extended thermal lines, you can't get a whole lot of stuff. Okay. It's now time for the Protoss here to try and slow down this Terran attack to the best of his abilities. And he's been doing an excellent job as far as that goes throughout this series, but now it's gonna be MaxPax's time to shine. Or, sorry, Clem's time to shine. It's gonna be time for MaxPax here to defend. 3rd Nexus, though, is done, but you can see the supply count, right? Clem is starting to pull ahead. That's mostly been due to the fact that that 3rd command center was done so early on. Now his economy is once again gonna get a nice little boost, since finally, yep, he is no longer reliant on oversaturating his mineral lines, and he can actually evenly send out those workers over the 3 mineral lines that he's got available right now. Main question is at this point, when does Clem want to go for an attack? Is he reading that this is not a Colossus transition? Protoss is just sticking around on mass gateway unit here. Marine Marauder, though, definitely better than Stalker Zealot. The units just synergize so much nicer. It's the same for like Roach Ravager or like Ling Bane. Those unit compositions synergize so much better than Stalker Zealot. There's the Robo Bay on the back of this, together with the 4th Nexus. If you look at the minimap though, MaxPax is setting up what seems to be a full surround here. Jimmy here somehow, some way, got himself through all of the front lines into the Protoss base, and he sees that there's no gases taken here. Okay. Protoss units are everywhere. No, he forces the stim at least, so that's nice, but... Medevac goes down inside of the main base of the Protoss. A couple probes are going to go down as well. Beautiful. Lovely work right here by Clem. Honestly, excellent play. I think MaxPax decided to get a little bit too cheeky here. And he's been trying his best, but against this very Marauder-heavy army, that gateway-heavy force here from Clem, or from MaxPax is not going to work out. Okay. He sees the timing right here of the 4th. Gets a couple probes. Sorry, Jimmy. Oh, never mind, Jimmy. He gets to go in as well. Zealot's now trying to just buy time, right? Like, that is their main goal here. MaxPax needs splash damage of some sort, and the Disruptors are coming. One of them is just finished up. Gonna knock down the rocks over here. Widow mines have been set up. Reinforcing Terran units are gonna be able to easily shut this down. War Prism should not go down. Okay, I was gonna say, if the War Prism dies here, that would be a disaster. Oh no. Well, it's gonna be a disaster. Alright. Yep, and you can see now the 50 supply lead. What exactly happened in this game? Not a whole lot. MaxPax decided to play rock, paper, scissors, and he went scissors, and Clem went rock. That's what happened. Rock OP? I'm not sure. But that is a discussion for another time. Here comes Clem though. Trying his very best. And I think he will be just fine. Yeah. We'll have to see when he decides to go for the sledgehammer attack, right? Like, when does he decide to put all of his eggs in one basket and go for an attack? Much like what we saw earlier in this series, I believe in game number 2. He really doesn't need to get too aggressive. Oftentimes, again, it's easier to just go for the expand and then expand again and then expand some more. Try to build up your advantage. Although, of course, that does give MaxPax a lot more time here, so... A couple minutes ago, it was quite literally just like one Immortal and Zealots and Stalkers. Right now, it's an army that is accompanied as well by Disruptors, and if there's one, well, comeback unit that Protoss has at their disposal, it is certainly the Disruptor. One big hit in the face, and this Terran army can be in all sorts of trouble. That's why I do like that these rocks are actually down. Clem has decided that he wants his opponent on 4 bases, and 4 bases only. Nice split. MaxPax, though, he sees where this is going. He realizes that there's really no way for him to get much done, and he decides to rip off the band-aid himself. Clem wins game number 4. So, the rubber match. What was previously looking like a landslide victory for MaxPax has now turned into a series where Clem has got momentum behind him. Momentum is a very real thing, especially for an emotional player like Clem. It's very easy to get stuck in your own head while you're playing a game of StarCraft 2, and I really hope that that is not the case here for MaxPax. Zealot opener right here, by the way, for MaxPax, but... Game number 4, he decided to go for a cheeky strategy on a map where it really isn't great. So I'm hoping there that he is just looking at that game and he's like, ah, it happens. I decided to, yeah, give it a try. It didn't work, whatever. Time for our next match. Because if he's a little too concerned about it, he's like, oh no, why in the world did I decide to go for that build on that map? I knew it wasn't gonna work. Why did I decide to do that? It's very easy to get stuck in your own head like that. Anyways, Clem at this point, I believe he does not know that there's a Zealot marching towards the other side of the map, and that can actually be quite annoying. Command center here on the low ground. Quick bunker here as well, though. Alright. So maybe Clem does realize what he's playing against, because that is gonna make protecting all of this a whole lot easier. We do not have a... yeah, we do not have a Marine or anything like that out just yet. And Clem is gonna need some units. He does start up another supply depot, by the way, in the back of the mineral line, so he's reading this situation well. There's certainly a chance that this command center is not going to finish anytime soon, and if you rely on the command center, you always get supply from it as well, right? So if you read your build order a little bit too strictly, you might hit a supply block if this command center just does not finish. But the supply depot here, it's gonna make things a bit easier. It's the little things that make all the difference. Reaper actually gets the kill right there on the Adept. Second Adept shows up as well. Does get the snipe right there on that SCV that was popped into the bunker a bunch of times and tried its very best to stay alive. Somehow, some way, that SCV over here, the backup SCV, okay, made a run through the front lines and did make it down towards the low ground. And that means that this command center is going to finish up here eventually. Okay. Rock, paper, scissors. This time around going in favor, it seems, of our Protoss player, who's opening up Phoenixes against a Terran who decided to go into the Banshee. Banshee's not a great unit against that sort of thing. In the meantime, though, we do still have some harassment over here. MaxPax doesn't quite want to show exactly what he's got. I don't think he really has a choice. Okay. In the end, all of the Terran units are gone now. But, yeah, he has shown his hand. So where exactly does this... Okay, Banshee go? The Banshee just goes all the way around in the longest route possible. Or with the longest route possible, I suppose. I guess it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, he just wants to send it all the way to the corner and then eventually into the main base of the Protoss. You know what? There's always a chance, even though this is a one-way trip here, there's always a chance that the Banshee will suddenly find the Protoss base, as all of those Phoenixers are, for example, on the other side. Now, this is the moment where MaxPax sees indeed that there's a tech lab. Maybe you already saw that earlier, actually, as well, but he must realize at this point that there's either gonna be a Raven out or, for example, a Banshee. The odds of there being a Cloak at this point are rather low. Alright, we're gonna settle for a few Marines, since there was some energy anyways. And here's that Banshee going in. So this is a Banshee that really shouldn't get anything done, because the ultimate counter against this unit is out. But sometimes the anti-timing, right, of those units showing up later than they should, sometimes it works way better than you would ever imagine. Okay. So that's 6 probes right there for one Banshee. And for a little while there, Terran has got a nice income advantage. Robo Bay is going to finish up momentarily. Quick Robo Bay, by the way. That is long before the third Nexus ended up going down. We'll see MaxPax transition towards a very, very safe opener. This strikes me as one of those Protoss builds where you don't want to die to anything stupid, which is fair enough, I suppose. It's just that it also means that it's going to be much harder to play the macro game moving forward. Because yeah, you won't die to anything, but you also just don't have the economy to really put a lot of pressure on your opponent until much later. So this is one of the, yeah, I don't want to lose against the silly Terran 2-base all-in, but it turns out Clem is not going for a 2-base all-in, as he's got himself an orbital command already. Now, this is something that MaxPax scouted, so he doesn't know exactly what he's playing against, so it is a conscious decision by him. But I don't think he's going to be able to be as aggressive as he has been throughout this series overall. I feel like the most success he's had in this series has been when he was very aggressive, right? After defending in the early game, his follow-up attacks were absolutely relentless, and while he can sort of do some of that in this game, I guess, with the Phoenixes, it's going to be mostly Clem right here that gets to make the decision as to when he wants to attack. Well, it is a scary amount of Phoenixes, though. Colossus also showing up. Extended thermal lens is not even done yet. This is a cheeky little attack right here from MaxPax. One of those attacks that in theory really shouldn't work. Colossus putting in quite a bit of work right now. Extended thermal lens is going to finish up after this engagement. Okay, is this the new MaxPax special? The Cyclones are putting in a lot of work, and in the end, it looks like a complete army wipe, as both players end up losing their armies. And I'm inclined to imagine that that is a superior decision right here, or a superior outcome right here for Clem. Like, those Protoss units are much harder to remake than those Terran units. Marines are, well, for all intents and purposes, free here. Those Cyclones, I mean, yeah, sure, kind of sucks. Losing the Colossi, though, is painful. Losing the Immortal really does make the game a little bit harder. I mean, it's not like MaxPax had a bigger economy on the back of this either. The Nexus here will finish eventually, I guess. But this is already later than where you ideally want it. And we have that classic Terran attack here on the back of it. +1/+1. Combat shields and Stimpak already done. Concussive shields are gonna finish up here in just a few seconds time. When does Clem decide to go for a move out? Obviously, he did just lose his army as well, so it's difficult for him to judge exactly when the best move is to go. The best moment is for him to go. I wouldn't even mind it if he just decided to put down a 4th command center right as that fight ended. But he's now got, yeah, a whole load of barracks and a little supply depot head here as well. Got a whole lot of barracks. Armory coming up. That does actually kind of suck. That armory is delayed. Should have had that one done already. There's the 4th CC. You can see that Clem is a little bit flustered though by that attack, because normally the armory would be done to go straight into 2-2, and the 4th command center probably could have started up a little while ago already. He hit a bit of a supply block as well. Clem is gonna have to make sure he gets back into the swing of things when it comes to the macro of this match. MaxPax in the meantime has finished up, or is just about to finish up, the 4th base. And he's gonna go for his 2nd Robo Facility 2. His beloved Blink upgrade is finishing up together with the ground weapons level 1. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Charge here fired up pretty soon as well, because these upgrades are kind of late. If Clem can snipe this base, that would be massive. Absolutely massive. This is the lifeline right here for MaxPax, and he's completely out of position. Oh no. So he's got... oh no. Yeah, that's really rough. Yeah, so normally, in this matchup, Protoss is a base up on Terran. But because MaxPax has decided to play so safely, his 3rd base was late, and now his 4th base got sniped. As the 4th Nexus starts up again, this time around over here at the 9 o'clock position, Clem has finished up his 4th command center. And this is huge right here for Clem. This is gonna get scouted here as well by Max, who's now gonna see the command center. He's not gonna be happy about that at all. Because the late game, again, it's very tricky. +2/+2 upgrades are super late though here for Clem. I think he could have started those up like a full minute earlier. But I don't think it really matters. Okay, yeah. So because of this, MaxPax has decided, okay, it's time for me to make some drastic decisions. He's gonna go straight into the fleet beacon right now together with another... actually, no. Yeah, no, that is gonna be the 2nd Stargate here. Derp. I, for some reason, did not see this Stargate. But you can't make a fleet beacon without a Stargate. Plus, there were already, of course, a whole lot of Phoenixes that died this game. But anyways, MaxPax is going straight into Skytools this time around. Now, Clem, not aware of this yet, is gonna go straight into the offense. Zealots over here being a nuisance, but Planetary is done. Looks like these Zealots over here will be cleaned up as well. And Clem has successfully sliced the opponent's economy and infrastructure in half, as he's now going to be able to get this base here on the left side of the map. Jimmy, in the meantime, did end up getting killed, but yeah, we're now effectively playing like that 3-base carrier build, right? That we've seen a hero go for. Desperation carriers for MaxPax. Well, that was good. Well, you can see the supply count here is no longer deceiving us. Oh no, this is a rough one though for MaxPax. Because game number 1 and 2, he looked so strong. And it looks like this series right now is starting to slip away from him. These carriers are gonna have to get something done, but the thing is, Clement already has 8 of these Vikings up in the air. He's going for the +1 upgrade. He's going into the 2nd starport. He's got everything to deal with Colossi. He wants to go into those Liberators eventually. And now he's gonna see a carrier, and he's already making the right counter. He's already making the unit that he needs to make against those carriers. 7 probes go down. Clem was ready. Ooh, okay, well that's good. He was ready to snipe another Nexus here at the bottom of the map. Immediately, by the way, additional starports get planted. So, starport number 3 and 4. I think we're currently watching a Protoss player with a very slow death animation, guys. Like, this is a 7-minute death animation, I think. I don't know exactly when the death started. Probably at, like, minute 8. I would not be surprised if, when the first waves of units come out of those new starports, MaxPax is gonna have to tap out. He is running out of juice. Like, his main base and his natural are running out of resources here, and he just doesn't have a lot of staying power anymore. He's been trying to take a 4th base several times already. But, yeah, as Terran is securing a 5th, MaxPax is still struggling to take a 4th. Look at the Viking count. 15 Vikings. Unless we see the disruptor hits of a lifetime, I don't think Clem is gonna let this one away. I don't think he's gonna let this one go. EMP, big EMP. Observer there gets sniped. Colossus in a little bit of trouble. Battery overcharge though, very hopeful here, of course. I mean, these are very expensive losses right here for Terran. Yeah, this is a very powerful Protoss army. It's Disruptor, Colossus, Carrier. So basically the most gas-heavy units that Protoss has at their disposal. Yeah, and I don't blame Clem here for going back a little bit. +3/+3 is on the horizon. +2 has been fired up as well. Ghosts are getting their personal cloaking upgrade, and Clem has decided to not take any chances, just rely on those additional command centers instead and slowly build things up. MaxPax now forced to start long distance mining one of his bases because, well, he can't afford much anymore. I think what MaxPax is trying to do right now is put all of his eggs in one basket. Just make one hell of a Protoss army, maybe try to max out, and then go for an attack. I don't even know if he really can go for an attack though. Look at that. Clem just sprinkling 4 scans out on the map. Just constantly scanning his opponent. He's got scans for days now. 3-3 is finished here for Terran. At least by the time that the next clash between these armies will happen. If MaxPax can choose, he would much rather fight underneath the safety of this high ground than the shield batteries, but... or I guess on top of the safety. Nexus here, not gonna happen. A little medevac drop here in the natural as well to slow this down. Mostly just to spur MaxPax into action here. Turns out the death animation is longer than 7 minutes, guys. Yeah, I don't think I like the strategies here that MaxPax chose so much in game number 4 and 5. It just, it can work out, right? Like, both of those builds can work out. And I think they do work out in practice games that MaxPax plays against weaker Terran players. Like, against guys that are, like, in the top 50, he would win with a build like this every single time. But Clem is a top 5 player, right? Like, he is much better than that. And yeah, game number 4, a little bit too aggressive with the 4 gateway opener on Babylon. And now a super safe 2-base start with Phoenix, Colossus on 2 bases into a 3rd Nexus against the Terran with triple CC. This is too much damage. 19 probes, by the way, have gone down here. A couple SCVs are finding their deaths as well, but none of that really matters. In the end, this game is gonna have to be decided by MaxPax fighting the opponent's army. He's been avoiding it this entire time. But I don't think he can avoid it for much longer. Like, the way he can avoid it is by tapping out of the game. By hitting the G button on the keyboard. F10N. That would be the way, yeah, the hotkey to quickly leave a game. Excellent moves here by Clem, though. Beautiful games here by him. Playing the strategies that need to be played. Triple CC on that previous map too. Such a cheeky one, right? Like, he knows that the opponent's chances of playing that build are rather low, and I would say that normally triple CC is actually not that great of a choice against 4 gateway blink. But Clem showed us that he is a master at his craft, and he knows exactly. He's a master at his StarCraft. He's a grandmaster at his StarCraft. Okay, well, that analogy kind of lost any traction, but that's okay. I believe that MaxPax is gonna have to put all of his eggs in one basket right about right now. Yep, I think it's time for him to go for a move out and try to win with this army. You know what? This is a scary force. There is certainly a chance that Clem is gonna fat finger one of his hotkeys and make a mistake. At this point though, we're talking 30 Vikings. MaxPax though has decided, and I understand it, he's decided that he's not gonna give Clem or us the satisfaction of watching that entire Protoss army die. But in the end, it's indeed Clem who comes back after being 2-0 behind. He comes back to win the ESL Open Cup 191 for the European server.